Hey guys, welcome to another informational interview. Here we have Shannon Chang, and where we're going to learn more about who she is and what she does. I am Danya Factor.
I am Stefan Pearls.
And I'm Kayla.
And let's get started about the interview.
All right, so I'm going to go on about a quick overview of how the interview is going to go. So we're going to start at 4:10, where we'll start introducing our professional and interviewing her. And alongside, we're going to have students ask questions too. So yeah, and 4:55, we're going to wrap up and have students reflect on what they've heard and learned in the chat, or we're going to have a discussion. So we're probably going to have a discussion. And at 5, we're going to end the call. And something that we think that would be good is if you were to grab a paper and a pen to take notes, because we're encouraging everyone to at least ask one question. So yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so here is some of the businesses who have previously supported Passion Impact, and we encourage you to support them when you can, especially throughout this time. Thank you for the people that are here in Zoom watching and for the people on YouTube. That's good.
All right, meeting expectations. Rue will be watching you. He is in the top right of the screen, but he's here around me somewhere. We will show gratitude and respect all of those via chat. And you are currently muted. So when you have a question, raise your hand. And so we're going to practice that now. So I want you to raise your hand where you can find that. If you look on that right part over here where it says participants, and then raise your hand. Go ahead and, if you have the ability, go ahead and raise it right now just to make sure we got Christina, Alan, Cece, Jennifer, Sophia. Is there anybody else that I'm missing? I don't know. All right, great. Go ahead and lower your hands. Thank you so much. No nudity, vulgar or demeaning language, or inappropriate showing of your screen or inappropriate background images will be tolerated. So please make sure to keep it civil. We do reserve the right to remove you from Passion Impact programs, and depending upon how severe the offense is, you might be banned from any future PI teleprogram. That being said, all of our names are first names and not last names. Most important part, we're here to have fun and stay engaged. So I'm going to pass it over to Kayla.
All right, I'm passing it over Danya.
So here we have Shannon Chang. So originally, she's from Southern California. Being Taiwanese-American, she is. Her identity was always a big struggle in her life, which fueled her to major in sociology. She traveled excessively for 4 years after graduation. Her dream was to learn Spanish. She lived and traveled in Latin America for 2 years, where she taught English and managed building a peace building project. Currently living in Wellington, New Zealand, working on a team that works to bring Latin America closer to New Zealand. She's passionate about getting people to think critically about their lives and choices.
Ooh.
That's me.
Thank you, Shannon, for being here.
Yeah, of course.
Also, we missed something about this beautiful introduction. Could you talk about more of what we could have missed?
No, I mean, it covered it. I would like to, I'm very open to questions. I'm an open book. So any questions that you have, I hope that will be interactive, but it's hard to exactly put a finger on it. I don't know should I just take you through like an overview since high school, or what's the best thing to do? I don't want to overtake your questions.
That is a great question. Maybe we should start with some group introductions first so that we can all kind of get loosey.
Yeah, so before we jump into the interview itself, let's do an icebreaker activity that the whole group could do. All right, so just it's gonna be popcorn style. So you're just gonna introduce yourself and your pronouns, and the question of the day is, if you were a mythical creature, what would you be? I can start. And my name is Kayla. I go by she, her. And if I were to be a mythical creature, I talked about this before, but I would be a dog and a dragon mixed. So I would be a dog that breathes fire and can fly. And I'll popcorn it to Christina.
My name is Christina. I go by she, her. Um, that is a difficult question to answer. Unicorn. Okay, I'll popcorn it to Cecilia.
My name's Cecilia. I go by she and her. A mythical creature, maybe like an eagle and a whale mix.
Ooh, I like that.
Who are you popcorning to, Cece?
A popcorn to Danya.
Okay. My name is Danya. My pronouns is she and her. A mythical creature. I think I would be a fairy for sure. I want to fly.
Ooh, nice.
Okay, I'll popcorn that to Alan.
Nope, we can't hear you, Alan. Sorry.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me turn up the volume. Hello?
Yep.
Hi, my name's Alan. I go by he, him, and what I would choose as a mythical creature to be would be a phoenix, because I like to fly as well.
Good answer.
Everyone loves to fly.
Who would you like to popcorn
Popcorn
to?
to Stefan.
Hello, I'm Stefan. I go by he, him, and I would either be a minotaur or a centaur
Ooh.
because they're just angry looking but really sweet-hearted animals. And I'm gonna popcorn to Sophia.
My name's Sophia. My pronouns are she, her, and if I had to be a mythical creature, I don't know if this counts, but I think I would say a hobbit because they seem to have pretty good lives, so I could appreciate.
Hobbits live in New Zealand. You should come here.
And
And who hasn't gone? Has Jennifer gone?
I haven't gone. I'm Jennifer. I go by she, her, and I'd probably choose the Pegasus because horses are pretty cool, and then they can fly as well.
Ooh.
digging it.
And I'll go to Shannon.
Am I the last one? Is everyone else?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm sorry, Danya, but I'm gonna have to go with mermaid, even though you hate them, because I really like scuba diving, and it would be the closest thing to that.
So cool. Awesome. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here. Pass it back to Kayla.
All right. Yeah. Thank you everyone for sharing. It's really interesting getting to know what you guys would want to be in a non-reality kind of world. So yeah, let's get into the interview. So Shannon, can you talk a little bit more about your job? It's kind of like really iffy about what I'm hearing, just like sociology, I tried. Okay, but yeah.
Sociology, yeah.
So, yeah. It's the retainers. But can you go a little bit more in depth with your job, kind of?
Okay, so I will say that what I learned is that what you major in college really doesn't have much to do with what you end up doing. Literally, the only degree that actually matters is engineering. So that's the only one, because you can be a doctor and still major in like political science or something. So that's the first thing I'd like to say. Sociology is the study of society. And so what did I study in uni? I studied race was one of my things that I focused on. We studied how institutions work. We studied how people interact with systems, things like that. But so to be honest with you, my job doesn't really have to do with my degree. As you can see, sociology is very broad. I can talk more about my major later, but my job, so I'm a project coordinator. at an organization. We are funded by the government. We're a really small team of 5 people. We work we work at the uni, but we're not funded by the uni, but our office is there. It is back when I was in high school, even in uni, I didn't really understand that how many options there were. I was like, oh, must be a accountant or must be a like manager. There were so many opportunities that I didn't even realize. And so this is one of them, to be honest with you. And I mean, the world is changing so much, as you all know. And from even when I was in high school to where you are all at, like there have been so many changes. So my organization, it's hard to explain. We're project-based, and essentially we are tasked by the government to get New Zealanders to want to engage with Latin America. And so as a project coordinator, I run several projects. I also help with the finances of our organization. I help with the comms, so I'm on all the social media. I help with strategy. I do a little bit of everything. I don't want to get too into it because it's not something that you can necessarily take steps to get into. But I just want to say that there are so many options in the world. If you have like a passion or an interest in one thing, there are so many organizations, nonprofits, companies, government organizations that are trying to do something with that idea that you might be interested in. So yeah, it's broad. It's not something that I necessarily focused on and then achieved. It kind of just happened.
Yeah, just taking from wherever, I feel like finding identity is probably one of the most like important things to you right now. And like you were once a teenager before, like we're teenagers right now. So
yeah,
like,
of course.
And going into having to find a direction, like figuring out what college to go to, like what helped you during that time when you were a high schooler trying to figure out what your direction was?
Oof. I struggled for so long. I remember starting sophomore year, I was like, what am I gonna do with my life? What am I gonna do with my life? And I would like spend my week. Oh, am I back? Okay, sorry. I have like a million tabs open. I think that's why my internet's slowing down. Sorry. Yeah, I remember sophomore year, I started like researching on the weekends all the time, like what do I want to do and talking to people about it. And I was just so obsessed with it. And all throughout uni, I had no idea what I want to do. Everyone would be like, what are you going to do in my last year? And I was like, I have no idea. And everyone else seemed like they knew. So my point is that the only advice I would tell you is that it actually doesn't really matter. I know that's probably not what Steph wants me to tell you, but you can come up with plans, and they can change at all times. Like you can literally, I've had friends planning to be doctors, to all these things, but at the end of the day, like, I think the most important thing is to follow your intuition. And if you keep following that at every step, it will lead you eventually to where you're meant to be. And you don't really understand until you look back. And so, for example, I really didn't want to go to the university that I went to. I wanted to go to the East Coast. I didn't want to stay in California, but I did. And looking back now, I'm so happy that I did because it allowed me to go on semester at sea, which is how Stefan and I met. And I didn't know that before then. I didn't know that when I first got the admission letter when I was in high school. So I guess overall, it's important to explore. It's important to try to understand what your passions are, and what you like. But I think I think often, whether it's our families, whether it's society, we want to plan from the external. So we want to plan, I want to be a businessman, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer. And then we plan backwards, but it doesn't make sense to actually do that. You need to go from what you actually care about and then work your way to finding a job that can apply those things. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, that was a great
I
answer.
can see that. I can see a lot of us I can relate to that. We can all like don't know what we're gonna do, what we want to do, and like sometimes we have to look for a passion for what we like.
Yeah.
And yeah, I understand that. But okay, so how did you know your major was like right for you?
I didn't. I honestly, what happened is I was like, okay, these classes sound the most interesting. And then I was like, but I'm probably going to change it because what the heck do you do with a sociology major? Which is literally how I still feel now. You don't really do anything with it, but that's fine. My point is that sociology taught me things that I will take with me throughout my life. It might not have translated directly into a job, but I'm still applying skills that I learned in my daily life, in my conversations even. And yes, although that doesn't render like economic benefits necessarily, it's still something that has added to my life and taught me like, I guess, my relationship with the world and how things work, which is useful for anything. But my point is that, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna major in this for now, and then I'll find something else that's maybe more useful. I was like, oh, let me do something in public health, let me do something more concrete. And then honestly, I just got too busy to change it. I was in a lot of extracurricular activities in university, and I just felt like that was more impactful than a major. And I will tell you, honestly, when you interview for jobs in the future, no one really cares about your major. If anything, it might be a point of like interest if someone had majored in the same thing, but they don't really care. They care the experiences you've had, they care how you present yourself, and they care, you know, what you're about and how well they think you'll fit in their company or their organization. So I know I was freaking out about it for so long, but it really didn't matter that much.
Oh, it looks like Sophia has a question. So we're going to direct our attention to Sophia. And if you can just introduce yourself, pronouns, please. And yeah, can you unmute?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I'm Sophia. My pronouns are she, her. And so I was wondering, how did you like get introduced to the idea of like working abroad and getting involved in a job that would require you to work abroad? Like how did you kind of segue from a sociology major into that?
That's a great question. If it's okay with everyone, I think maybe I'll take you on my timeline, and so you can see how nothing was planned. And
That'd be great.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, how did I end up in New Zealand? I'm not sure. But anyway, so I graduated uni, and in my junior year, it's when I did semester at sea. Stefan, have you told them about it? Do they know what we're talking about? Okay. So semester at sea is a study abroad program where you can live on a ship. And we lived on a ship for 4 months, and we went to 15 countries. And so that really opened up, like, my perspective completely changed. You know, it's like you're in a fishbowl your entire life, and then you finally get to know that you can walk. And so it completely opened me up, and I was like, you know what? I'm very concerned. Like, I thought back in high school, I was like, I'll graduate college, I'll get an internship, and then I'll work in a company. That's literally what I thought was going to happen. And so after semester at sea, I was like, okay, I know that I'll be able to work for whatever, 40, 50 years of my life. Now is the time to travel, and I don't want to do it later. I want to do it now. And I knew that I could maybe get some years of experience in professional experience and then travel. A lot of people were like, oh, you shouldn't go now. I was like, no, something in my like soul was like telling me that I had to go. And so what I first did was I moved to Washington, D.C. after uni. So I went to uni in California, one of the UCs. And I was like, let me get out of here. And so I moved to DC because I wanted to experience another part of the US and a more international city. I moved to DC for an internship and was there for 6 months. Liked it, but didn't really want to stay. And then I bought plane tickets to Southeast Asia. So I backpacked Southeast Asia with my best friend for 4 months. And so after that, we were like going to, you know, figure it out. But I was like, okay, don't really want to stop. And then I knew that I wanted to learn Spanish. That was one of my goals. I thought that I was going to take 2 years, you know, to travel and to live in a Spanish speaking country. But it ended up being double that. Anyway, so I came home for a while and kind of I worked for Lyft for a while. Very random, not a driver, I like rented cars. And I also worked for this other company called Road Trip Nation, which I think all of you would be interested in. So they are passionate about helping people find their true careers. So they have a bunch of resources on their website. I can give Steph the link after this. And they do interviews. They're literally doing what you're doing now, but they interview people much more famous than I am, like Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, whatever. So I worked for them for a while. So I traveled on an RV, and we went through to Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, very random. After that, I was like, I'm not done traveling. I went to Europe for 2 months. And then after that was my plan to live in a Spanish-speaking country. And so I backpacked Central America for 3 months from Mexico to Costa Rica, and then took a flight to Colombia where I had a teaching English gig lined up. So that was going to be my stint to like really live in Latin America. I did that for 6 months, decided that I didn't want to leave the country, and I wanted to do something that related to the peace process there. Long story short, Colombia was in a 50-year civil war. The peace treaty was signed 2 years before I was there, and so I just felt called to do something with the peace process. So I worked for an NGO for about a year. I also worked for Rustic Pathways, which is another program. So they do volunteer trips abroad for students. So I basically ran a program in Costa Rica where high school students from mainly the US would come, and we would ideate a summer camp together, and then we would put it on for Costa Rican kids the week after. So I did that, and they have trips all over the world. I'm sure with right now things are changing a lot, but that's what they do. And then after that, I just felt like I was ready to go somewhere else. I went home for a while and kind of to try to plan and reorientate myself. And then I ended up in New Zealand. So honestly, I wasn't looking for a job that related to Latin America. Truly, I wasn't. And that's what I mean. Like, I couldn't have planned this, you know, but I'm very happy where I'm at. But I really didn't know. I just followed my gut. I came here, and then for those of you who want to stay in the US, I'm not sure if this relates, but in New Zealand, they operate with recruitment agencies. So basically you go to a recruitment agency, you give them your resume, and then they find you jobs, which sounds like amazing, you know, because you didn't have to really do the work. And to be honest, they don't really hire people outside of that. So even if you applied directly to an organization, they wouldn't have necessarily interviewed you. So I was honestly looking for something to do with mental health. So this is my whole point, that even if you have something in your mind, it might shift. And I was looking, and it took me like, I think 2 months. And then one day the recruiter called me, and she was like, oh, there's an organization that is doing stuff with Latin America. And I was like, that's crazy. I would have never thought that in New Zealand. And then here I am 7 months later. So that's pretty much what happened since uni. It wasn't planned. A lot of people, including my mother, were like, what are you doing? When are you going to get a job? But I'm really happy, and I have no regrets.
Wow. Suena muy interesante.
También hablas español, qué bueno.
Yeah, wow. Like, you've done so many programs, gone from here to there. That sounds amazing. Yeah. Muéstrame tu español.
Pues, bueno, yo lo puedo hacer en español si quieres.
Wow, okay. I see you. Okay.
Yeah, I you know, I will still say the same. Like, a lot of my friends now, you know, who are worried and crazy about their major and then crazy about what they want to do after university, they're now in jobs that they frankly hate. And it's because, and I'm seeing, you know, I come from an Asian background. I know how the culture is, but honestly, you definitely, I completely understand the need to, like, you know, have a job and make sure you're doing something that, you know, your family and you can be proud of. But at the end of the day, this is your life. And it's, sorry, but I mean, we're all gonna die eventually. And you might as well spend your life doing something that you actually care about, you know? And I know that if someone told me that when I was in high school, I would be like, you don't understand me. I have so many pressures. And so I'm just gonna leave this, you know, this can stay, and you can watch this video 10 years later. But still, I think for a lot of my friends who didn't actually pursue what they wanted, but pursued what they felt they needed to for the people around them, they're not happy now. And I will say I'm very fortunate. I have parents who are very supportive and just want me to be happy. And I can't say that I would have been different. I can't say they would have done what I did without that, but it's your life to live. And I think now, being so young, you all have the time to explore. To be honest, I didn't even realize until I started traveling what my hobbies were. What did I do in high school? I played 3 sports. I was in student government. I had Mandarin classes on the weekend. I had dance. I played piano like every other Asian kid. And I didn't know what I liked to do because I never had time to explore, you know, and I think that's really sad, frankly, for me. And it wasn't until 10 years later where I was like, oh, these things are what I'm passionate about. I just never really gave myself the chance to explore them, but figure them out.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yes.
So first and foremost, really quickly, NGO. You said NGO. NGO. I'm not sure if anybody knows what that means.
Non-governmental organization, basically nonprofit.
Cool. And that's sometimes it's abroad and it can like stretch across multiple countries and so on.
Totally.
And so forth. Cool.
Yeah.
My question to you is, you talk a lot about passion. Obviously, it's behind me here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's just something that we at least espouse here, and you know, the circles that Shannon, both you and I kind of run in. But
yep.
What does it even mean? You know, how do you know that you're actually passionate about something? Like, you're very guttural. Like, you take that initiative to think about a lot of these things critically. You know, for some of these students who may have not had that experience yet, or you know, just what's your lens to that?
Yeah, I think it's the stuff that you want to talk about that doesn't bore you. I'm thinking back about high school, and I was passionate about sports, I guess, but I really didn't know what else I was passionate about, even in university. But now I can only say that it's the stuff that you don't feel is taking energy to do. You know, I realize now I was not passionate about piano at all. But it's the things that you want to do, even if, you know, no one told you to. So I think to think about it that way. Yeah, I mean, even now, the conversations that I want to get into, the activities that I want to do, I think I was so used to pushing myself to do things, you know, a million activities, sports, whatever, that I just didn't realize that that's actually not healthy. I realize now that the things that feel natural and the things that feel just good are what is actually aligned with what I like and what my passions are. And that all the things that I pushed myself to do, all these organizations, all these jobs that I took, were just me trying to prove something, and prove my worth, and prove that I was capable, and prove, you know, an image that I wanted people to see of me or something. So yeah, I guess it's just what doesn't drain your energy, really.
Oh my gosh, I totally really relate to that because I do lots of sports, and I was doing basketball for 7 years now, and then
wow,
last year I decided that it was really hard for me, but I decided that I really didn't want to do it anymore. Not because it was just something that I didn't look forward to, going to games or practice. It felt like more of a chore to me rather than what I enjoyed doing. So I decided to drop it and go Passion and Impact full on because I really like it. And just I really relate to that. And this one question: what sports did you play? Since you
and I will say first, I'm very proud of you, because I think that's something that is harder than saying yes is saying no. I think maybe all of you relate to that. I'm very bad at that, and it seems weak, or it seems like I'm not capable or whatever. But I played volleyball, I ran track, and I dragon boated. I don't know if you know.
Oh my god, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we do that over here. Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, but I just wanted to ask that little question. But let's go back to traveling. Go back to traveling. So, you know, people travel a lot, and it really takes a lot of financial support to be able to travel and stuff. So that's my question right there. How did you manage to support yourself financially, since some people don't really come from a very beneficial kind of financial background?
Yeah, no, great question. Everyone always asks me that. I will say, one, that I didn't use my parents' money at all. So what I did was I would have jobs in between trips. And so I would save up. But honestly, people think traveling is so expensive because they look at holidays and it's like, what, $100 a night to stay in a hotel? I backpacked, right? That means like all my stuff was in a backpack, and I stayed at hostels, which costs like, depending on where you are, like sometimes $10 a night. So honestly, when I did Southeast Asia and Latin America, which are the two regions that are cheapest, Europe, in some parts of Europe as well, I spent about $1,000 a month. And so in both of our states, I'm pretty sure sometimes rent can cost $1,000 a month alone. And I'm talking like food, activities, and lodging was $1,000 a month. That's pretty much how I would budget myself. So it wasn't easy. Trust me, it wasn't easy, which is why I was like, I'm done with this. I really would rather like not have to eat bread sometimes. And I'm not saying it was like that the whole time, but my priority was to travel, and I had a limited amount of funds. And if I was going to do that, then I was going to, I was going to do what I had to do. But I just want you all to know that it's possible. I mean, there are so many different ways of saving money, especially, which countries you choose, flights, all those things that I can get into more detail later, but it's definitely possible. I think it's more the unknown. Like I said, in Southeast Asia, I backpacked with my friend, which was great. But I did Central America on my own, and I was so scared to go on my own. And everyone was like, you're gonna go to Latin America on your own as a woman, like that's so dangerous. But I think oftentimes, like, the logistics, the money, you can figure that out. But if you really want to do something, nothing else really matters.
Yeah. So like, yeah, traveling, just going everywhere. Like, yeah, you traveled like so many places and all that. What made you decide to oh, I'm just gonna settle down and go to Latin America? What made you decide on that?
Well, I mean, Latin America, it was just the fact that I wanted to learn Spanish. And honestly, I don't know, it was a very emotional decision almost. Like I just knew that I wanted to live there. And I will say, backpacking versus living in a foreign country, it's two different experiences, right? Like backpacking is fun. You get to meet so many people. You're like pretty much, yeah, it's just a great adventure. But living in another country and learning a language at the same time, it's such a beautiful experience, because a lot of the times, we're all English speakers, and most of the world in tourism, they are too. So I felt really guilty, to be honest with you, in Southeast Asia, where I felt like people had to adjust to me. They had to speak my language. But in Latin America, a lot of people didn't speak English. And so I had to adjust to them, which I think is fair because I'm visiting their country. And just that process of like, going to the grocery store and you're like, a year ago, I wouldn't even know how to get around here. And now you can have fluent conversations. Like watching yourself grow through that is just an amazing experience. So I taught English, which, because we all are English speakers, that's so easy. I didn't even have a qualification to do it. I just went with the program. And I would definitely recommend that as a way to do it. And then in terms of funding, they gave me a stipend every month. And so, I just used that. I didn't save any money, but that wasn't my goal. So I would really recommend that to anyone who's interested.
Yeah, so just going back to like, this is like kind of an ethical kind of question, so you don't mind.
Of course not.
Yourself being a Asian American and just entering into like a foreign place, did you ever see yourself like out of place at all, just around the people, or did they like accept you right away, or just like the feeling of being?
Yeah. That's a very fair question. So this is complicated. So I don't know if any of you relate to this. Growing up, I just never felt like I belonged in the US. Just never did. Could be because of race. I don't know. I always went back to Taiwan every year with my family. Could be because of that. I have no idea. But I never felt like I belonged. And it was something that, I really struggled with, like I said in my introduction. And the craziest thing is that the moment I stepped onto Colombian soil, I felt like I was home. And I cannot explain to you why that is. I just want you all to know that it's possible that you can feel these things in other places that you didn't think that you could. I wasn't expecting that. I mean, really, there are like no Asians in Latin America. And I, for some reason, just didn't feel, so it wasn't necessarily that I didn't look like the people. there was something about the people that I identified with that I never really did in the US, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, I mean, it was tough. I mean, on one hand, I would speak Spanish and no one would really question. I didn't always get like, where are you from? Like, why do you speak Spanish? People just treated me like normal. I'm not sure why that was. On the other hand, oh my gosh, you know, people would call me chinita, which is like the word for Asian, which is, you know, not fair because they're talking about one ethnicity when it's talking about race, but they'd go like, oh, tú tienes ojos así, you have eyes like this, and blah, blah. And like, it was really difficult for me to know that I have preconceived ideas of what those things mean and how racist those things are in the US, but realizing that it didn't necessarily apply to Latin America because they don't have the same history that we do, or, you know, and so a lot of it was like, they had never met an Asian person. People would want to take pictures with me. I one time danced with this guy in salsa, and then he bowed to me after, and I was like, what? Like, and I told him that I was from the US, and he still bowed to me, and he wasn't doing it to be malicious. He was genuinely like, thought that that was respectful. I was like blown away. I mean, I have stories for days about that, but my point is that, I don't know, I never knew that I could feel so at home in a place that I'm not from, my family's not from, or anything. And that's what I think is beautiful about travel, is that you literally get taken to different, you can't even conceptualize like how different it is, you know, like the things that I would do, my personality changes when I speak Spanish. Like, I just never knew that I could access those things back in high school. You know, my world was like the US, and then I experienced Taiwan. I knew there were other countries because of that, but I didn't know just how vast everything could be. And I didn't know how much it could transform me.
A beautiful way of, and just very eloquent way of thinking about that. I know that Alan had a question. Alan, do you want to come back to you on that question?
Oh, it was already answered when she was talking about it. It was like about the racial tension thing, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
Question. Sophia has a question now. Go for it, Sophia.
This might be like kind of a generic question, but I was wondering, what do you think, especially since you talked a little bit about like how the process for applying for jobs in foreign countries is different than in the US or other places. What do you think, or in your experience, or in people that you know in their experience, what do you think gets you noticed as a foreigner applying for a job in a different country?
Ooh, that's a good question. To be honest with you, a lot of people in the world have very good impressions of US work ethic. Personally, because I think US work ethic is very unhealthy, where US work culture is very unhealthy. I think we are overworked. But because of that, on the international scene, people know that we're very professional and that we get the job done. My director made a joke the other day because the person before me was also American, and he was saying that he only hires Americans now. But I don't think I have an answer to that necessarily, because it really depends. I mean, in Latin America, a lot of the teachers that I work with really like working with me, but I think just be yourself, you know, and be passionate about, they could clearly see how much I cared about the students. And so it really depends on what, you know, I don't want to get into exactly what field, but I will say, I thought you were going to ask me how to get, what's important about getting jobs in general. And I was going to say it's who you know. Actually, I think about 80% of the jobs I've gotten, it's from connections that I had, or not even connections, but people that told me about them. As you can see with Road Trip Nation, Rustic Pathways, those are very like obscure, not like, I don't know if you know, like PwC, like the consulting firms, it's not really well known. And it's because, you know, everywhere I went, I talked about what I was interested in. I made connections with people that were interesting to me, and then they would tell me about these things. So that's what I guess I'm saying, is that sometimes it's not a very linear process, right? Search online, look for jobs, and then find them. Sometimes it's just about being yourself, making connections, and not because, you know, so many people, especially like for college, it's like you want to talk to the right people to get into college. There's always it's always such an external thing to do. It's like, do this so that this will happen. I like really don't believe in that, because yeah. But if you just talk to people that interest you, you know, that give you energy, like I was saying about passion, I really think that it can lead to things that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to find just through the linear process, if that makes sense. So I didn't really answer your question because I think it really varies abroad, but I hope that helped.
So, and I'll echo in the sense that, when I used to talk to Shannon, she was very upfront about what she wanted. And throughout our conversation,
really, what did I want then? I don't even know what I want now.
you talked about traveling internationally. That was like a huge thing for you. And I think that when you did come home, there was a sense of not belonging. And I remember we were talking about this probably a year and a half ago, maybe now.
Which is why I never stayed at home. Yep.
This is fair. And Danya, I don't think we'd talked a little bit about your past, but I didn't bring it up in the introduction beforehand. So you did a little bit of work on the border and serving immigrants. And I know that Danya has a question about that. So I want to pass it over to Danya to see if she can get asked.
Could I quickly just give an overview of what I did exactly? And then for everyone, sorry, Danya, before. So
No, that was the question, yeah.
Oh, really? Okay, perfect. Sorry to not let you answer it. But this is a perfect example of how things lead to things that you didn't plan for. So I told you all in my introduction that I worked on a peace building project in Colombia. So when I was there, I recruited someone from the US who runs a peace building nonprofit in the US called Activate Labs. And so I brought her over to facilitate workshops for us. And basically, after I decided to move back to the US, she was like, hey, I just got funding for a project to do work with a migrant crisis. Do you want to come along? And so it was from a connection I had in Colombia that I ended up doing work in Mexico. And so long story short, what we did, we were doing art trauma healing projects. So as you all know, well, I'm not sure if migration and being a refugee is a very, very traumatic experience, right? And so we wanted to be able to bring, there's different kinds of aid. There's humanitarian aid, there's legal aid, but there's one thing that we felt like wasn't accounted for, which we all struggle with every day, which is, mental health and feeling like yourself. And so we provided pretty much like art supplies. So we face painted kids. She printed out this huge poster that was plastics, it wasn't paper, that kids could draw on. One of the kids, I have a picture of it, wrote, I miss my family. And the idea was that we brought this to DC when we lobbied politicians about policies relating to the crisis. And so, yeah, it was really difficult. And then we ended up following 3 families as they migrated north. So we met them in Mexico City and then went with them up until Tijuana. And so the idea is we also wanted to do a narrative shift campaign, and we wanted to show the public, especially the US public, what the realities are and make connections with them. And so I wrote an article, which I can send to Steph and then he can show you all about that process. And so it was very interesting for me because, my family, my parents are immigrants, right? And they immigrated legally, but they immigrated for a better life, which is exactly what Central American migrants want. That is a human right. Not even, my parents didn't even come because they were refugees. They literally cannot, they're not living in conditions that are humane in their countries. And so they're striving for, but that's a human right. And so I just think there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of fear in the US. There's a lot of territorialism, right? Of what's yours and what's mine and who's American and who's not. But I think in the end, at the end of the day, we all, belong under the same sun. So there's a lot of stuff in that, but yeah.
Yeah, I can see how all that works. Thank you. Alan has a question, if we can be able to put him up and ask his question.
A question I have for you is, during your trip, how did you cope with stress and, just stress?
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I will say, with everything happening now with the pandemic, I'm much better at dealing with uncertainty than I was back in high school. Because I had, I had planned everything. I'm the kind of person that has a planner, different colors and all those things. And I always just knew what it was, that I wanted to do or attempted to. And then I think when you start traveling, you realize that you don't have control over anything in life, the bad things, right? So like getting lost, not, having, I don't know, the things that you're used to. But on the other hand, there are so many amazing things that happen that you didn't control either, right? People that you meet, so on and so forth. So I just think over time, I just got really used to the fact that I can't control anything. And in terms of stress, I mean, I still could talk to people from home, right? And so for me, I think it's important to learn how you best cope with stress. For me, I like to verbally process with people that I care about. And so being able to talk to people from home was really helpful. But overall, a lot of the fears that I had, how stressed I'd be, how I'd miss people, how I wouldn't make friends, none of that really ever materialized when I was traveling. Yeah.
Great question, Alan. And right now, and the opposite of traveling, it's almost just as pertinent to think about that as well.
Yeah. I mean, uncertainty will be with us for our whole lives. I'm sure none of you expected that in your junior year, whatever year you're in, that this would happen. I didn't expect this. But that's life, right? And I think the thing is that when we actually think we're in control, we're not actually in control. We have the perception that we're in control. But I think if I could tell you anything, the sooner that I learned, and it was through travel, that I didn't have control over anything, the sooner that life became much easier. And I knew that I couldn't be a perfectionist, that there was no such thing. And it just kind of allowed me to appreciate and just go with the flow. There's a phrase in Latin America, I'll say in Spanish, only Donnie will understand this, las cosas fluyen. And it just means that things flow. And that's like the biggest thing that I learned when I was there, is that, you want something so badly, or you think you want something so badly and you want it to happen and it doesn't. And you suffer, right? And you feel totally upset, but it was never yours in the first place. And it means that other things are meant to happen.
I love your mindset. I love the part where you said go with the flow, because honestly, that's what I'm doing right now. Not really worried, because whatever happens, never really can't really be like, oh, I have to do this because my parents want to, but it's more of like kind of myself kind of thing. But Cecilia has a question, and I'm gonna unmute so she can go. Wait, let's see. Yes, I do.
Okay, so I want to know that, because of the current pandemic right now, how has that affected your job and the projects that you're working on, since you can't travel the world right now?
That's such a good question. So a lot of our projects, we send students to Latin America, or we bring academics from Latin America here, and it's completely has been changed. So in terms of my daily life, I've been at home for a month and a half now. It's good because a lot of our stuff is online. We use kind of like a Google Drive. So that hasn't really affected our work, but all of our projects, I mean, everything has changed. We had about 45 projects. About a third of them involve traveling, and we have to change everything. And so I think it's actually been really good, because I've learned how to deal with uncertainty, that instead of stressing out and thinking about, oh my gosh, everything's changing, that I'm able to just take it as it comes. I mean, like Kayla said, whatever happens, happens, it is what it is. There's no use in putting energy into something that you can't change. And you might as well put that into something productive. So yeah, I mean, all of our projects have to change. Some of them are canceled. A lot of my projects are canceled, which is unfortunate. Some of them are moving digital, as I'm sure a lot of you've had to do with Passion Impact. But yeah.
Thank you for that. And great question, Cece. So we're going to have to start winding down now. I'm going to also ask and see if it's potential that you might be able to answer any questions for those of the students who are on here via email. If you send me all that stuff, I can potentially send that out. Is that
happy
okay?
to? Yeah,
cool.
happy
awesome.
to.
So the last question for you. All right. If you have not been on an airplane, I just want you to think about a can that's just above your head, and then you're in this can for a long time. For those of us who have been on airplanes, it's sometimes a pleasant experience, but the most unpleasant experience is getting up to go to the bathroom when there's a line. And it's not that it's oh, I'm gonna go enjoy this, and you're oh, I'm stuck there. You're I'm standing next to people and they're sleeping or looking at me, and I might smell or they might smell. But then all of a sudden you stand next to Shannon, and she turns to you and says hi, and you say, oh, this is a chance to hear about your life story. And she says, I have 30 seconds till the person in the bathroom is out, and I'm going to pitch to you why you should travel and you should work abroad and you should follow your gut. So right now, Shannon, give us your 30 seconds standing in line for the bathroom of the airplane pitch.
Great. I am not going to pitch that you should travel and that you should work abroad. I'm going to pitch that you should do whatever you want to do. The rhetoric is traveling is amazing. Everyone should do it. It's not for everyone. You know, I have tons of friends who can find their passions and, you know, explore and learn on their own just in the US. So I will just say that traveling allowed me to experience life in different colors, you know? But that's something that I wanted to do, but that doesn't mean that that's for you. So whatever it is that, you know, is that little voice inside of your like head that's kind of telling you that you want, that's what I think you should do, you know, whether it be travel, and I'm happy to talk more about that, or if it's not, it doesn't matter. It's whatever you want.
Thank you. And now you have to go to the bathroom, and I'll stay in the line and make it weird again. With that being said, I want everybody to check out my shared screen. We're going to do a wrap-up reflection here. We used to do these on chat. We talked about this beforehand. If you have something that you just want to throw out there to the group, it's always better to kind of reflect as a group. So what did you learn from this interview that you're excited about? And how can you use that information moving forward? And then also just for Passion Impact here, like how can we improve this experience for you? So if you have any ideas, comments, or concerns, throw them out there.
And while we do that, so if you have a joke that you should have prepared an hour ago.
Look at me, Kayla. I have already told you. Oh my God.
I'll start with something that I learned.
Oh no.
It's not a joke. It's not a joke. I promise.
Okay.
I can tell one. Something that I learned, and I think I've done this, but I didn't think about it until right now as to how powerful that is. Shannon, is like just talking about what you're interested in, and thinking about what you're talking about constantly and saying like, is that actually what I'm interested in? Just talking about that more. So yeah, that was a big thing for me. Anybody else? I can popcorn if that's okay.
I see some stuff in the chat.
Oh, there is? I haven't been looking at the chat. I'm sorry. Alan says, I can use this information in college and in my daily life to help progress in my life with a smile. Fantastic, Alan. Jennifer, I've learned that your major in college won't always correlate with your career and that connections are really helpful for getting jobs. Absolutely. Cece, I learned that it is okay to be uncertain about life. That's just going to be growing up and being an adult for sure. Alan, more interviews. You want to add to that? Kayla, listen to your heart and your gut. Awesome, awesome. If you do want to say something and not type it, that's okay too. That's always okay.
I can say it because I'm a slow typer.
Go for it, Danya.
I can use this information moving forward. Probably maybe because recently, just yesterday, I was thinking about what if I moved to Hawaii for college, and I was talking to my family about it, and I'm like, whoa, like what about this interview just talked a lot about traveling and stuff, so I can really use that information moving forward.
Awesome, Danya. Sophia says it's reassuring to hear that you can feel at home someplace where you don't look like the people there, or if you've never been there. That's a very true thing. And I remember someone always telling me, like, you never know what you're missing somewhere else in the world. Like, some like government could be like giving out cakes when it's everybody's birthday. Who knows? Yeah. You really don't know until you get there. Yeah. Christina says, this interview made me realize that a lot of activities that do overshadow things that I actually enjoy doing, and that I should probably reconsider my priorities because who knows where it can take me. Also, I think Shannon should definitely start a podcast because the things she said were so mind-opening and blowing that she really goes into depth about interesting topics.
Thank you. That means so much.
And yeah, just going into it, like, for me, before going into the interview, I really didn't really think about it just because my parents, like, they're really people who are really hard at separating with me. They're like, oh, you can't go too far, like stuff like that. Really make me think about it. And it's like, I want to do some things. And yeah, it's really opened my eyes, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that, I mean, this is not very that professional, but I think a lot of the times parents, you know, they vicariously live through you and they almost make you feel like your choices are their choices. And I know that's that's something that my friends struggle with a lot with their parents, but you have to remember that you came through them, but not for them, you know? And they might not understand that, and that's completely okay, but that also means that you have to, you know, push for the things that you want, because they're not necessarily going to understand that concept, and you don't want to live for them for your whole life because it's your life and not theirs.
Yeah.
Period. Yes.
Yep. So real quick, oops, went too far ahead. Just to remind y'all of all of our programs that are happening throughout the week. On Mondays, we have parent support. Danya's been rocking in the Spanish translation, got all of our stuff translated. Thank you, Danya. We've started calling students to kind of figure out how we can get parents supported, whether they speak Spanish or Russian or Cantonese or Vietnamese, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to help on that, we'd love to have you on Mondays. Join us from 1 to 2:30. Article discussions are from 12 to 1, and students have been taking over leading those discussions. And those have been really eye-opening, a lot more psychological discussions and about business. So those have been awesome. Today, Kayla and Christina led workouts, and despite my having to work, I was listening in and I was sweating still. So if you do want to get a good butt kick in, that would be a good place to do it. Next Monday, Nina, Colin, and Anna will be talking about fundraising. All of them are here in Portland, and I know that 2 of them are Portland grown. They were born here, bred here, and still kicking it here. So there's a chance you might actually be able to meet them some point. Really, really, really cool people, and I'm really excited about them on Monday. Thursdays, we have 1 spot left for the Connectors communication team. If you like newsletters and blogs and social media, this is a great place to learn how that all works. And guess what? Jobs that are out there right now that are still kicking in this, marketing and communications. So this is a really good skill to have. Last thing is on Fridays from 12 to 1, we have games with Alan and Mary. And Shannon, I know that you weren't able to make last week, but if you want to make it this week at your 6 a.m., you're totally down to do it.
Oh, 6 a.m. Yeah, no.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, don't take it personally.
Last thing, y'all, is we're still doing the student career survey. It stops next week, May 10th. Actually, that's Sunday. If you have not taken it yet, you can get the chance to win a $25 gift card, one of 3 to either Netflix, Dutch Bros, or Grubhub. And this will help us move forward in selecting the next informational interviews candidates for June and potentially even July. So far, we have about 92 people who've submitted that one. So get your surveys in there. And with that, let us figure out, just unmute yourselves. I don't know how to do it. Unmute everybody. I don't know how. We're going to say thank you to Shannon and give a yippee.
Yippee!
Yippee.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Shannon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was
Thank you
lovely
for
meeting you all.
waking up so early for us. Gosh, I could never.
All right. Well, anybody who wants to join, go ahead and sign up for all those things. We'll see you another time. Shannon, Kayla, and Danya, stick around. Thanks.